Hello, everyone. Thank you for hanging around for this Q&A with Leonie Benesch, who, as you've just seen, has given us the most powerful performance in the Teacher's Lounge. I feel like when I was sending you a message about this after I first saw it, I used the word moving, which was a bizarre word to use for this film, because actually when I think about it, the phrase that keeps coming back to me is relentlessly stressful. It doesn't let up at all from the off. I feel like you've got a phone call at the beginning and you're interrupted, and then you're in a meeting and it's not going the way you want. And from that moment, Carla is never let off the hook. And by proxy, as an audience, we're never really given a moment to breathe either. Not only that, but in the film, I feel like, a scene happens and you think it's coming to a certain level of tension, and then it just goes up a notch again and again and again. It's a real ride of a film. But congratulations on such an amazing performance.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little bit about your first impressions of the script and also Carla as a character?
So the script came to me through Simone Beer, who was the greatest casting director in Germany. She cast me in the first film I ever did when I was 17. I owe her a lot. She sadly passed last year. But you always knew when Simone sent you something that was going to be interesting. And I remember reading the script, not quite understanding what the idea was. I didn't know if it was going to be about the thefts or about the recording. But what I did know is that I had zero questions about how to play each scene, because there was always a very clear obstacle and the dialogues are really well written. And then I watched Ilker's last film, and I really loved the way it was visible that he was an actor's director. So that was enough ingredients for me to really want to do this.
Yeah, I mean, the screenplay in itself, it just gives you so much opportunity. And there's also a lot of dialogue. I feel like it's been said that there's a huge amount of dialogue in this film, but actually an actor's dream, because there's so much interplay between all these different characters all over the place. Was there any particular research or prep that you felt you needed to do for this character?
No, I maybe I would have wanted to, but I had no time. I was filming a different thing. I was doing a TV show in Italy up until a week before we started. So even if I had wanted to, I wouldn't have been able to. And I also realized that I sort of steered away from conversations with teachers because it came so clearly off the page that I was a little worried that if I maybe talk to someone and ask them, how do you go about your job, I might then have an idea of maybe wanting to do what that person told me, instead of finding the truth in the script and on the day with the director and the kids.
Yeah, and I feel like Carla as a teacher she's a very particular teacher. She's young. She's idealistic, she's progressive, she cares about the kids. And yeah, so it seems what you're saying, it would be very easy to fall into a trap. Every teacher is so individual as well, and it seems Carla is as well.
Yeah, I mean the fun thing with that was that the setup is always the same. She wants to do the right thing and she fucks up, and something goes wrong, and she constantly tries to keep her nose above the water, and it doesn't work. And that's a fun thing to play with. I remember when Ilker and I went for our first walk, and he asked me, what did you think about the script? And I said, well, I don't know what it means, but I think I like it. I remember that he asked me, does it bother you that we never go home, we never see any of her apartment? And I realized only then that I hadn't noticed, because it's really well written, and I don't need to know if she's a cat person or if she takes the bike. And we had sort of a conversation about what is a character, and usually it's not that interesting to see what color wall someone has in a room, and it's more interesting to see what kind of decisions they make when they're put under pressure. And yeah, that is the setup for the film.
And talking about Ilker, what was your collaboration with him like on this film? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, he's wonderful. He manages to make everyone feel seen, which I think is a beautiful gift. And I don't know how he does it, but it creates a very safe atmosphere where everyone feels happy to try stuff. And in this particular occasion, you may have noticed there were a lot of kids, and I found that terrifying because I have 3 younger brothers, and I have no illusions about what it means to be around kids. So I did say to him from the very beginning that I will not be in charge of any of that. And he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of them." And I said, "Fine." So what that turned into was sort of like a very organic good cop, bad cop situation where he was their best friend and I kept a little bit of distance. So when the cameras were rolling, they would have an ounce of respect left. And it was, but I think what was particularly special, what Ilker did was he initiated a conversation with everyone who was going to be acting on set that day, so kids or grown-ups or both, and would just ask us in a room about, what did you dream about last night? What do you want to become when you grow older? What does it mean to apologize? He would just ask seemingly random questions that would lead to conversations where people would, and especially the kids, would feel like he wanted to know what they were thinking. And that created an atmosphere of trust. And also, at the same time, Judith Kaufmann, our amazing DP, used that time in the morning to already film kids. And that's where you get the occasional footage of someone with a finger up their nose, because they don't do that when they know they're being filmed. Yeah. But quite a lot of that footage from the morning conversations ended up in the film.
That's amazing. That's, well, also a fantastic use of time, because I've heard that in Germany, children can only be on set for 3 hours as well.
Yeah, 5 overall, but in the room, it's 3. So,
wow.
Yeah, on set from getting there until they get picked up, it's 5.
Wow. And what I find extraordinary about the film, and particularly with the child actors in it, and actually this makes sense from what you've just said, is that they are extraordinarily individual, all of them. And actually one of the huge tensions and the major stresses for Carla is not only dealing with the parents, dealing with the faculty, dealing with the kids as a collective, but all the kids have their own interpersonal tensions going on, which is just an enormous thing to manage anyway. But it was so, I really appreciated the adding all that detail, because again, it just takes, it's not like she's dealing with an isolated thing here and an isolated thing there. Whenever she's in the room with the kids, it is, anything could happen. And it's a huge thing to manage. And did you find that, I mean, I'm very interested to know, like, actually how it worked on set with the child actors. Like, because presumably, how long was your shooting day?
Well, we did have, our first AD made a great schedule. So the kids were there in the morning, and then the afternoons we did stuff in the teacher's lounge, or, you know, me walking down hallways. But the way, I think they are brilliant, because Ilker did a very thorough kids auditioning process where he would get lots of kids in the room, put them in little groups and say, you want to go to the Fridays for Future protest, explain to me why, convince me, and then sort of like have them improvise as to why. Like, they had to convince him to let them go. And then at a next stage, he would add a camera and see who would manage to not always look down the lens and sort of like filter them out like that. So they are all very talented, but I think the reason they are this brilliant is also because of Gesa Jäger, who's our editor, and Judith Kaufmann, our DP, because Judith came up with a very elaborate seating plan, because she wanted the main conflicts to, you know, for the eye lines to make sense in the space, and it's all like, nothing is coincidence with Judith ever. So she was very particular about what kid sits where, and I think that plays a huge part.
Yeah. And what did you notice a difference, or did you going back to Ilker, did you notice a difference working with a director who's also co-written the screenplay?
Yeah, I think that there's always an element of they really know their story inside out, and there are no qualms about throwing out a scene or a line or doing something entirely different. Almost everything that you see on screen is exactly how it was written down, apart from one scene where I remember he came in the morning and said, I haven't gotten this right. It's the scene where the kids demand to see the grades on the board, on the blackboard. And I remember he came in and said, it's not right. I need your help. This is the result. This is where I want to get to, but I don't think what we've written makes enough sense. And then he had us improvise something. Yeah.
And the amazing thing I think that happens throughout the screenplay and the film, and when we're following Carla, is something happens and you as an audience member are like, I don't know what I'd do in that situation. How are you supposed to manage this? Like, especially with the kids when they're so they are at times so precocious, and so they have such agency. They know their rights. They know what they can say, and actually someone with Carla's values, how on earth do you possibly manage all of that whilst maintaining control? I thought that was so well done in the film.
Yeah, I think it really shows that Johannes Dunker and Ilker, so his co-writer's called Johannes, they went to, they spent quite a lot of time in schools following around teachers. And I think the one thing they really wanted to translate into the script is they never get to finish anything, and they're always around people, and they're constantly interrupted. So most of the scenes are interrupted at some point. Someone needs to go to the loo, someone calls. There's always several things happening at the same time. That was one of the things. And then the other thing, I think Ilker and Johannes went to school together. So the writing process for them was quite nice, because they could be like, yeah, that teacher's a little bit like that, and this guy, and they both knew who they were referring to. I think that made the writing process quite fun. But they really wanted to I lost my train of thought. The first thing was the constant two things at the same time. The other thing, yes, they noticed was, compared to their own childhood, it was how much agency kids have these days, because they know about their rights in a different way. Because he said back when they were at school, even when they got in a fight with a teacher, they would come home and complain to their parents about it. The parents would say, what the teacher says goes. And that's not the case anymore. Teachers today are being asked to do way more than just a teacher. You're supposed to be the therapist, but, kind of have an authority, but be their best friend and see everything and do everything right. It's a little impossible.
Yeah, it's a huge job, and I imagine after seeing this film, not many people will be signing up, which is a tragedy. But we need more teachers.
Sorry.
Yeah, but I know that with the film, it's not necessarily set in a particular time or a particular place, but it does feel so contemporary because of that. It really feels like it taps into something that's happening in this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. I think it's why the film works. And I remember that also came up in the conversation Ilker and I had on our first walk. We talked about the script, and I said, I don't know what it is about, but I think if we get this right, it could be a clever comment on our current culture of debate, because there's something in the way people are so quick to misunderstand each other, and for everyone to want to be right and sound right and, be recognized and seen doing the right thing, but not actually being a part of a dialogue anymore, that I think is quite relevant. I do think that's the bit that resonates about this film.
Yeah, definitely. And the impossibility of trying to be a mediator in the middle of it, especially when actually so many of these discussions are happening with her and the kids in one space, her and the rest of the faculty in another space. There's sort of no common ground quite for it all to be hashed out in one place. So you shot the film, goes to the edit, it's all finished. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey of the film after it was all done?
So I think they finished editing and grading the film early 2022. Probably maybe a little before that. And then nothing happened because nobody wanted to buy it. The main argument was it does not have international potential. It's too German, it's too small. There's too much text. It's all in one location. We don't want it. We don't want it either. So both our producer Ingo and also Ilker, I think, thought about quitting the industry, because they said, we think we made a really good film and we don't know what else to do. We wouldn't know where to start if this doesn't work. Then we don't know what to do. And then Berlinale 23 happened, and we were not running in competition, but in Panorama. It's a different section. And all of a sudden, there was a buzz around the film, and it sold out over 3 days. And then it was sold out across the globe, and the people talked about it, and I don't know, Brazilian newspapers wrote about it, and all of a sudden we were going, maybe it does have international potential. But yeah, and then we've been on a very, very strange, wonderful ride across the globe with this film, finishing at the Oscars a couple of weeks ago, and nobody would have dreamed that. I think we were all thinking we were making a film for us. It's like I wanted to do it because it was a great acting exercise. I didn't actually expect it to be seen. You hope that, but you never know, especially with something small, art housey.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to know what the response from teachers has been, or have you had any sense of that? Because I feel like teaching can be such a thankless job. It can be such hard work. It can take over your life in a way. And I feel like it's really interesting. You say that it didn't seem to have sort of international appeal, but you know, schools are such profoundly important places, whether they're a negative space or a positive space, but also especially with these kids, it's a very, very important and complex time for individuals. And I feel like most people have an experience of that, whether you've been a teacher or not, or whether you've been a student, and, you know, full of very, you know, big moments in one's life. But yeah, did you have any responses from teachers in Germany or also internationally?
Yeah, both. It's I think it's a very I would imagine that teaching all across the globe is similarly difficult. So I mean, we did a cinema tour in Germany when the film came out there last May, and usually half the audience would be teachers, and they would get up in the Q&A and start teaching. Usually it was either teachers getting up saying this is exactly how it is and it's much worse, and then other people would get up and say our school is nothing like that, what are you talking about? And they would then have at each other. No, but I think it's been really, really wonderful to feel like we've been told that we've done justice to the setting of a school and the profession of a teacher, and that is the best. That is what we were hoping for. It would have been horrible if people had gone,
yeah,
terrible portrayal of a teacher.
I'm very interested. Do we have any teachers in the house, or any ex-teachers even? A few. I've seen one hand. Yeah, I've seen one hand, and I also know there are a few others in the crowd as well who are a bit shy at the moment. But yeah, one last question before we open it up to the floor. So have your questions percolating. So this is the second time you've been to the Oscars, right?
I didn't get into the theatre the first time when I was 18.
Oh,
no, I was at the viewing party.
So, and that was with the White Ribbon, which was your first professional job? Yeah. So, I mean, it's quite interesting coming full circle, and hopefully this is not going to be your last time at the Oscars, but what was it like going back there after all these years with your most recent project?
I mean, being there with this film was very, very surreal because it was so unlikely. And the first time I was 18, now I was 32. Those 14 years and, you know, a little bit of drama school training and all of that in between do make a difference. The first time was actually quite horrible because I was so overwhelmed and I didn't have anyone to hold my hand and tell me how to do things, and that you need a publicist and you need to, where do you get the shoes and the dress, and at some, you know, now I have a little bit of a better understanding of how the industry works, and it was stressful but fun. That was the biggest difference. And also, yeah, with this tiny film.
And also with you were in some good German company as well.
Yeah. So The Zone of Interest was playing in the other screening room, and Christian Friedel, who plays the Nazi, the
commandant.
Commandant. Yeah, him and I had our very first ever audition together for the White Ribbon, and he played the teacher in the White Ribbon, and it was both our second times back at the Oscars now, so we kept bumping into each other during the...
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, And obviously Sandra Hüller, who's my hero. And Wim Wenders was there. So yeah, it was a good year for the Germans at the Oscars.
Yeah. Great. Well, do we have any questions from the audience? I can't really see anything. Oh, we've got one right at the back in the far... Yeah.
I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about how you might have prepared or not prepared your relationship with Oskar, because you were talking a little bit about keeping distance with the children as a technique in general, but I felt that you had quite an intimate relationship with Oskar particularly, and his performance is really incredible. And I was just curious how you did or didn't work with him ahead of time.
So a fun fact about Leonard Stettnisch, who plays Oskar, is he's the son of Michael Klammer, who plays Liebenwerda, the colleague, the teacher. So I met Leo quite a few times and quite early on in the auditioning process, because Ilker got us together a lot, because that's, one of the key relationships. We didn't have to do a lot because he's just really good. He was cool as a cucumber. He knew his lines. He knew exactly what to do. I think his dad prepped him really well every morning. And he managed to not make the other kids jealous, which I was quite impressed with. Even though he was the lead of the kids, he was really good at being a team player.
And what an amazing exit. What an amazing final shot of him at the end of the film. Boy, oh boy, I want that. Do we have any more questions?
Oh, hi. I was just wondering, I know that from the footage that your character captured on the laptop, there's a certain amount of doubt as to whether it was or it wasn't. And the other lady that done it. I wondered if you as an actor versus you as your character had any set ideas about it and how that affected how you play the role.
So after our first table read, Ilker asked everyone, so who thinks she did it? And we all rose our hands. And then Eva Löbau, who plays Frau Kuhn, got really upset. And she said, there is no proof. You guys are mean. I'm innocent. And then she actually was quite upset. So she said to Ilker, I don't think she did it, and I will play it as if she's innocent. And he said, that's, of course, go for it. I personally think she did it, but but I don't think it would have made a difference to how I played it, because the doubt creeps in anyway. And the first thing of going in to confront her is like an impulse of wanting to, do the right thing and talk to the person directly. But then the moment she does get this defensive, I'm sure that, Carla gets confused as well. And I actually don't know.
It's great though that the film doesn't actually resolve it for you as well. It leaves the question in your mind as well. I love the fact that
it's how the idea came about originally. Was Ilker and Johannes talked about how about thefts. So Ilker's parents had someone help cleaning their house who stole, and Ilker says he remembers not the fact that money was missing, but the discussions that evolved around it. And then Johannes brought up, because Johannes' sister's a teacher, and she talked about thefts at school. And it's not so much what is going missing or how much. I mean, even here, it's like 10 euros that are missing from the wallet. It's nothing, but it's more about the like how passionate people get about what should be done and what is right and what is wrong. And that they thought was a really interesting kickoff.
And justice, like at the heart of it, or injustice, whichever way you're sort of looking at it.
Yeah.
Any more questions? I feel like I saw, we've got one here in the third row. Oh, sorry. Oh, is it coming down? Oh, somebody else is. We'll come to you in a second.
Hi. I just had a question, and maybe I had a question about, because at the beginning of the film, I kept on thinking what a good teacher she is. She's such a good teacher. And I wondered for you as an actor, whether you thought there was a point that there was anything that she did wrong in order to cause the situation, or whether actually as an actor, you thought it was more that she got caught up in the maelstrom of the school?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because you can't really tell the moment where it starts to go really wrong, because it starts from the very beginning. But I don't know. We've had a lot of discussions about this, and I think if there is anything to be said about where does she have flaws, and she does have them, it's like she does take the moral high ground. I think she thinks, because she's young and she finished her training like much more recently, and she knows all the right things and the good ways of how to do it, she thinks she knows better than the people who've done it for longer. And I think there's a flaw in that, because of course, you could argue that someone who's been in the profession for longer, who may be bitter, I side with her in most of the moments. But then if you go into a teacher's lounge and just show everyone that you know better, even if you don't say it, it's not helping, like pulling on the same string. Yeah.
Any other questions? I think we have one in the third row. Yeah. I know, we're all good. We're here.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I was going to say some of them have been superseded by what we've had before, but I was very impressed at the way that it just stayed in the school, and there were no shots of her home life and people existing outside. Obviously, that's very helpful when you're making a film, because you've got the one location as well, so it keeps it there. But I was wondering also, one tiny little question I had was in the Zoom call you were having, and you told the person you had to call them back or you'll catch up with them later. Was that the journalist from Babylon Berlin? Was that her?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe.
I couldn't remember his actual name. He called Baxter. He plays the main sort of voter, but I'll check it myself. It's probably on
I'd have
here.
to
But I
look that
thought,
up. I don't remember. I just remember him.
I just recognised the face briefly, but yeah. But the other thing is that again, it's a very, very, your character again was very, very intense. Playing it, and such a sort of a one-note thing that you had to sort of keep on that. I was just wondering, do your characters and others, do they sort of stay with you a while afterwards, because they really put you through the ringer sometimes?
No, it was seriously one of the most relaxed, fun shoots I've ever been on, because I think we finished filming ahead of schedule almost every day. It was very easy. Ilker didn't do a lot of takes. He did have a thing of, for this particular job where film, where he tried to be very reductive. So it's one location, as you said. It's basically one character in every scene. He tried to never do more than 3 takes. He asked his composer to mainly work with one note. He told his DP to stick to certain colors. So because he always talks in these Q&As about how the freedom is a curse, and actually if you create yourself a corset, a structure, you become more creative. But the setup, the shoot itself was lovely, and I had no trouble taking home any stress whatsoever. But also, we did film quite a few scenes that were calmer, and there were moments where Carla would ask for help, or there were moments where she had a little bit of time and space to breathe, and they all got, didn't make the cut because they weren't helpful to the story. But we also filmed those.
I was so grateful when you finally got a hug, though. Oh, wow. I felt she really needed it. I felt like I was getting a hug then as well. Any more questions? We've got a couple at the back. We've got one on this far side, second to last row, and then another one in the middle.
I'd just like to ask about, the bit of violence in the film, where, a lot of films, they glorify violence, where the teachers hit. And there's a lot of films at the moment quite violent. And in that scene, there's no witnesses. And obviously I work as a frontline worker, and that's, a lot of people's fears why they don't do jobs. And, unfortunately in this country, there has been, teachers killed going about their work. I was just wondering, what people thought about that in Germany, where the teacher is hit in the film.
I haven't actually spoken to a lot of people about that moment, other than people being outraged that even after she gets hit, she still lies and defends him. And that also being like an interesting twist in terms of her character, because at one point she says, you always have to tell the truth, but then she lies when she wants to protect the kid. But it hasn't really been talked about. I don't remember having a conversation about the violence of that moment.
Because the fellow teachers in the room, they suspect that is what happened. With the injury.
Yeah. Well, and she lies.
That's another really, that scene in particular is another really good example of where we feel like Carla's making a breakthrough and perhaps she's going to get the students on side again, and then it just tumbles out of control again onto it, like the violence between the two students, and then having to break it up, and then smashing through the door, and then the hit of and then the laptop being thrown away. The tumble of this film is quite extraordinary.
It was quite interesting to be there for the first couple of screenings in the US, because obviously they all expected Oskar to come back with a gun. And that was, we never had that in mind when we were filming it, but we felt the tension was unreal in that audience.
Wow.
And then we understood afterwards, but
yeah, that makes sense. We had one more question at the back. Great.
I absolutely loved the use of the orchestra in the soundtrack from the beginning, where it was like the orchestra warming up and you're there, the conductor sort of in front of the class, and then later on it's the same instrument used. Is there anything more you can sort of share with the process of how you work with the composer, or the use of violin and orchestra in that?
I didn't really work with Marvin because that was in post-production and Ilker did it, but I did hear Ilker talk about it a lot. So I can repeat what he said, which is basically he wanted, I think Marvin Miller is his name, and he originally created something much more melodic and more, I think, what we considered like normal film soundtrack, something a bit more classical, but Ilker kept he said that he wants the music to be like a sting, like a fly in his head that doesn't go away and just keeps coming back. And I know that Marvin was feeling really insecure because he said it's repetitive, it's not gonna work. People are gonna think I'm not creative. But Ilker really pushed him to continue down this path, and I think it paid off. Because it makes people very nervous.
Do we have any more questions in the audience? Oh yes, we've got one there.
Hi. Thank you. It was a great film, and congratulations as well to Marvin Miller. I think the music was just so threatening at the start, in particular in the one note. And I wonder if when you watched it, did that add another dimension for you, or did you feel that threatening from reading the script and performing it?
No. When I first saw it in summer of 22, they showed it to us all the actors, they showed it to us in a little cinema they rented. I had to get over the fact that I was looking at my own face in every frame because I hadn't experienced that to that level before. But so I had to see it a second time to not just see that. But I remember, because then I saw it a few times, and I remember every time I watch it, I can appreciate every other department's job even more. And I still until now I realize what Judith has done in a brilliant moment of not quite showing something, or because everything is thought through, and I really love it. But the last time I saw the full film was in October in Athens, because I was sitting in with a friend who hadn't seen it yet, so I thought I'm just going to watch it again. And I remember being really annoyed by the end of it because I thought it's way too stressful, and I know it quite well, but it does get my pulse up.
I think we have time for one last question. Are there any more in the house? Or if not, we can just wrap it up there. We are so grateful, Leonie, that you came to join us tonight. Thank you so much for sharing.
We have one last question. Is that all right?
Oh.
Just one more?
Oh, yeah. Go on then.
It just came to me. Were there alternative endings ever?
There was So the last shot of Oskar being carried out like a king was always a question mark. There were bets going on between the director and the producer whether or not it was going to end up in the film. And our producer lost the bet. But the idea was... and I also remember, it even said that in the script, they were separate. The idea, the reason that shot is in there is because Ilker and Johannes said there is something about that kid, even though we may not agree with the choices he makes and how he stands up to authority, he does stick to his guns the whole way through. And Ilker and Johannes wanted a slightly poetic moment celebrating someone who sticks to their guns and speaks up to authority, because the only way we live in a democracy these days is because at some point someone in the past did do that for us. So that's why that shot is in there. And it's also supposed to be a little bit funny.
Yeah, it definitely is that. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We're so proud to be showing the film here at the Garden Cinema. We're so happy that you could join us. Thank you for
Thanks
making
for
the
having me.
time. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone.